Hey everyone, I am back. It's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. And hope you all are doing well. I hope you've had an amazing week. I hope that you've had a wonderful week as we again wind down the end of the year here. It's hard to believe that we are in the very last month of the year. I don't know about you, but it seems like it's really flown by at this point. But nonetheless, thanks for those who are starting to join here. It's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. And for those of you, just a reminder, if you're tuning in for the very first time, welcome to Mental Health Moment. And if you tune in every single week, Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, welcome back. Just as a reminder to you all, every first Tuesday of the month, as I mentioned, which is today, I will be concentrating on children's mental health and giving you a couple of tips to help the children in your life. So whether that is your own child, your grandchild, niece, nephew, someone you know that has a child, you can definitely share this information with them because, unfortunately, especially with COVID, it has been really difficult for a lot of kids. And thanks for those again who are starting to join here. It's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. So I want to give you a couple of quick tips today, again related to the children or the teenagers in your life. And the first one is to really understand that there's a lot of things that happen to kids emotionally and mentally. There's a lot of circumstances that they go through. There's things that are traumatic to them that we may not, as adults, necessarily feel is traumatic because we think differently. But it is. It's really hard for them to deal with sometimes. So the first tip I want to give you is to make sure that you or someone you know in your life is making sure that children are being seen by a physician, because some kids, they have a lot of different conditions that look like a mental health. And hi, good evening, thanks for joining. But a lot of kids have something that look like a mental health issue, but sometimes it's actually a physical issue causing that. So for example, low blood pressure, or it could be issues with iron. It can be, I mean, all sorts of different things can be happening. Thyroid issues, all sorts of different physical health addition, physical health conditions. Just like for us as adults, these things happen sometimes in kids as well. But it looks like ADHD, or it looks like depression or behavior problems. So again, first step I always tell, and this is something I say in my own practice as a psychologist, I send a lot of parents to medical doctors first to make sure there is nothing physically going on. But provided there isn't, and that's not the issue, it could really be something emotionally or mentally that's happening to this child. So, and thanks for those who are still joining here. Blessings to you as well. Thanks for joining. But it could be something that is emotionally or mentally happening with this child. So I encourage you to really think about being a support system. Again, whether it's your own family, maybe you have a friend or a coworker or whomever else that needs that type of support for their child. I encourage you to be that support system. And when I say that, sometimes it's really the simplest things. I promise you that as a psychologist, sometimes it is the simplest things that really go a long way. So however you can support this family, this parent, if it's even giving resources, if it's listening to them, if it's encouraging them, if they're seeking, hopefully, mental health services, if they need that, those things go a really long way. Because as we always talk about all the time on Mental Health Moment, unfortunately, there is a stigma of mental health treatment, especially in Black and Brown communities. So it is critical. There's a lot of people that I know that hide their treatment, the fact that they're in therapy because of friends or family members that may not accept that decision. So if you can be a supporter and just know that not everybody is supported by this decision, that can really go a long way for someone. Um, and and thanks for those who are still starting to join here. I'm just looking at your comments here. How are we going to, how, I think it says, how can we find out if the pediatrician refuses to do any blood tests or any treatments. I think that's what it says. So I will give a hypothetical answer to that, since of course I won't give specific medical advice, but I will say in general that if a physician is not willing to be comprehensive with a child, I would suggest looking into finding another physician, because my personal and professional belief is that you really have to be thorough when it comes to children. I can't tell you, you all know, some of you know, one of my subspecialties is ADHD. And I wrote a book on ADHD for parents specifically. One of the specific reasons is because it's so overdiagnosed and quickly diagnosed. And not just that, but with kids, we make so many quick assumptions. And in 5 minutes, we're labeling kids with ADHD, or they have a behavior problem, or they're lazy, or all these things that are not necessarily true. So that's another thing, another tip I was going to give you today actually, is to encourage people to be thorough in what they're looking at and thinking about. There's a lot of kids that have gone through things. I mean, I don't know about you, but COVID-19 and this whole pandemic, and now we have a new variant and all these things that are happening, it's a lot. It has really taken a toll in different ways for different families, and it's affected children too. And there's data out there anyhow that we are seeing more hospitalizations with kids. So that in and of itself has affected them in a lot of different ways on top of their personal lives. So there's a lot that they've gone through. So again, I really encourage you to really think about, I say this from the bottom of my heart, to really think about the team that you're building for this child in your life. When I say team, I mean whatever type of specialist it is. I think someone in here said, that someone else was talking about like epilepsy, which also looks like ADHD. Correct. There's a lot of different physical health conditions that look like a lot of different things. So making sure that you're encouraging people to be thorough in their approach. There's a lot of different people and a lot of different areas that make quick decisions, and instead we need to see the whole picture, right? So I'm going to encourage you to that for that as well. And I think someone else said, was talking about, and one of the things too is really to think about, again, I was just reading some of your comments here, but to really think about when you're building this team, because I talk a lot about team when it comes to kids, because sometimes it just does. It takes a village, right? That's what they say, to raise kids, but it also takes a village when it comes to specialists, whether it be mental health professional, if that's something you need, or a primary care physician, like a pediatrician, for example, or a family physician, whether there's a speech therapist that's needed, or physical therapist, or whoever else has to be on that team. The goal, of course, I think all of us would agree, is to make sure that this child is thriving. And I'm going to put, I'll switch this out here. If you all ever need any referrals or any resources related to children's mental health, or maybe other specialists related to mental health, then you can always go to my website, reach out, as I tell you all every single week, and I'll do my best to connect you with someone, or to find you the appropriate resources. Because again, it is so critical, you all, that we are taking the time with our children to make sure, number one, to make sure we know what's really happening with them. There's a lot of conversations that I've had with kids and teens, and sometimes it's surprising to parents of what is on their minds, right? And what has affected them in some way, and what they're thinking about, and what they're worried about, and what they're stressed about, because they do have stress too. There's this old notion, which is so not true. There's this old notion that somehow kids don't get stressed, or kids don't have mental health conditions, which is the farthest thing from the truth. I've met many children that struggle with depression and anxiety and ADHD and all sorts of other different issues. But the good news is there's a lot of things that we can do to prevent a lot of heartache and suffering for kids, which is why I'm sharing this information with you. And I hope that you share it with others. And also, as I mentioned before, The most important thing to do is to really think about how can you connect, again, if it's your own family or friend, coworker, whomever else, how can you connect this child with the appropriate resources? Because I can tell you, being in the mental health field, there are a ton of resources, but unfortunately, it's not always known, right? So, again, if you have any questions about resources, you can always reach out to me on my website. I'm more than happy to share all that information with you, depending on what part of the world you live. There's obviously different resources depending on different communities, but generally, there's different options that can be helpful for kids. Someone said here, utilize the social workers within the schools. Absolutely. And I used to work in the schools a while back, way back, when I was doing my residency work for psychology. And what I can say about that is not all schools are created equally, unfortunately. There are some schools that are amazing with the amount of resources they have, and there are some schools that are not at all equipped to handle the mental health conditions of children in their schools, unfortunately. So hopefully the school that you're working with does have the appropriate resources, but if not, there's also the community around you that has a lot of different resources as well that can be helpful to this child. And again, if you need me, like I said, or send me, actually, most of you send me questions on social media in the direct message. You can also reach out to me on there too, on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever you're on, I'm probably on it. So you can reach on there as well. And again, I will make sure to share the resources with you. Yep. I see that all the time. I see someone on here said, the doctor tried to give my son medication at age 6 with a 5-minute observation. I refused to accept the diagnosis of ADHD, and he was later diagnosed with a different diagnosis. Yes, I see that all the time. As a person that specializes in testing with ADHD and learning disabilities and different conditions with kids, I can tell you time and time and time again, after doing a thorough assessment, I also have found that there's a lot of kids that don't have ADHD, that it was thought they had ADHD, or they had ADHD and something else too, like a learning disability or depression or anxiety or something else that has to be addressed as well. So again, just make sure, as I mentioned, just to make sure you're thorough. Make sure that kids are really getting a fair chance and we're being thorough with them, which means connecting them to resources, and which means if maybe you don't even know the resources, but for you to be connected to them in some way, for you to be a part of their life, that connection in and of itself sometimes can be very healing for a lot of kids. I encourage my support group to have personal discussions with my kids. It's always my kids to have another resource to go to. Sometimes they just don't feel comfortable sharing details with their parents. Absolutely. Which is why I strongly recommend to each and every one of you, again, if it's you, your family, or if it's someone that you know of, to encourage mental health treatment. There's a lot of mental health professionals who are very well qualified to work with children, hopefully someone who specializes in children and teens, because that's also very critical. It is not the same. I can tell you, after over a decade working with kids and teens, it is not the same as working with an adult. So make sure you find a specialist who works with kids if you are looking for a mental health professional. And I think someone said too, I was one of those kids many years ago. Absolutely. And thanks for sharing that here. So again, you all have my website. If you need me, or like I mentioned, on social media, you can connect with me on there as well. Please be sure to reach out. If you have any other questions, you can put them in the comments area here, and after the live, I'll go in there and check out your questions. I can't give specific medical advice, of course, because of all the rules in the profession, but I'm happy to connect you with resources, referrals, and even if you're out of country, I will try my best to find you a resource near you. So thanks so much for you joining here today. I hope you have an amazing week. Next week, we will go back to our regularly scheduled programs with the wellness tips. But again, I just want to remind you all, the first Tuesday of every month will be dedicated to children's mental health. So be sure to bring your questions. or you can send me your questions beforehand. And again, I'll do my best to get those addressed for you. But again, I just encourage you again to make sure that you're reaching out to kids. Make sure you're connecting with kids. There's a lot of kids, unfortunately, that are hurting right now, who are hurting right now. So make sure that you're reaching out to them and connecting, and their family members as well, and their caregivers as well. So again, have a wonderful week. I will see you all back next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here on Black Women Empowered Incorporated Facebook page and LinkedIn Live and YouTube Live. So take care, y'all. I'll see you next time. Bye, y'all.